fit in the nuts and bolts of IP strategy. Firstly, why are we doing this?
Adrian, the key reason for doing this is earning and retaining hard currency offshore. And the way you do that legitimately is by putting people on the ground in the offshore jurisdiction that are undertaking legitimately the functions that can create a business and help a business operate in that jurisdiction.
And the goal is obviously to create IP offshore, so it's owned offshore. How does what you just said track into those functions offshore?
Yeah, absolutely. It really starts with having someone offshore and first of all looking at the place of effective management and taking the executive decisions. So that's really the first bar or the first hurdle which needs to be overcome. People need to be on the ground taking decisions in relation to where that business is going, what they're doing. And then it leans into more substantial aspects around substance and the creation of IP.
Okay, so now we've got a company offshore which has got human beings making the real decisions and anchoring that company in the offshore jurisdiction of the tax resident. How do we take that, dive more deeply into an IP strategy?
We look at the real functions that they are performing, and when you break that down and fit it into a framework from a legal perspective, you're looking at what are the creative functions which they're fulfilling. How do those creative functions then lead into actual IP that is being created? What is the investment required in order to create that intellectual property and software? There are a number of different resources which need to be paid for. And that all leads into risk-taking decisions. So if you're looking at investing in a certain product, you are looking at taking financial risk and investing that in order to create IP.
So let's put this into context. So we've got a company offshore which is performing certain functions, making certain decisions, making certain investments. What you're saying is those functions and decisions and investments must be centered around the IP. Is that right?
Absolutely. And it's the real people taking the decisions around that IP.
What sort of real people are you expecting to see or in an offshore company for them to have a valid IP strategy?
Well, the typical person you'd expect to see in a company creating intellectual property would likely be your CEO and your CTO. So your chief technical officer is generally the guy or the girl who is taking real decisions and taking strategic decisions around what that IP actually looks like.
Let's zoom into that person now, that kind of product owner. I think you called them that kind of product owner. I think you called them the CTO, Chief Technical Officer? Okay, so let's say we have this person offshore. What are the kind of activities you'd expect that person to do in order to be creating IP?
They would need to, first of all, be considering the extent of the product that they're creating. What does the market look like, and what does that product look to address within that market?
Okay, so this sounds like that first phase, blue sky, creative ideas phase. So this is the kind of person that says, okay, now this new feature is, there's going to be great demand in the market. This is going to cost this amount to build, and this is the opportunity it's going to give the company in the market. Okay, now they've got their process. What do they do with that next?
Then you look at it from a commercial perspective. So there needs to be someone who's actually building the software. So they need to be taking a real decision in terms of a commercial arrangement, which says to the chief development officer who might be in a different jurisdiction and sets out exactly what they want that product to look like. And that goes to a service level agreement generally, and that service agreement will stipulate exactly what software product and features are going to be created and how those features address the needs that they are looking to develop on a bigger picture scale.
So this sounds like somebody sitting in an offshore jurisdiction, in an offshore company, who really dictates what is built by who and on what terms. Almost sounds like a normal arm's length arrangement in terms of which you hire a third-party developer to develop your project, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is nothing complicated from a big picture perspective, but when we start looking at it from an IP strategy with two different jurisdictions operating, having the need to operate on an arm's length basis, the value which we really try to bring to this process is the clarity around the different phases of IP creation. And that goes back to, firstly, the blue sky thinking and the creative aspect. And it then flows on naturally to what is the strategic decision and the commercial decision around creating that actual product, taking it from an idea that's at a blue sky level and actually creating a piece of software that can be utilized.
And the websites healthily categorize those into 5 phases, I think. There's the blue sky phase. There's the phase in which the board takes a risk decision to invest in this new IP. Then there's the third phase, which is that person you mentioned that sits offshore and commands the development outsourced to some entity, third party around the world, often in South Africa, in fact. Then there's the commercial model, which is built around this new IP product and in terms of which the IP product is commercialized. And then lastly, that ongoing enhancement and maintenance.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tim. Now, once we got that in place, in our next video, we'll talk about how you implement it and measure and evidence that it's been implemented.